Alright, welcome to the newest video where I go off script, off the cuff, and while talking about the character that I've made a video about recently. It might last long, you've been warned, but if you have some time, sit back, kick back, and enjoy. Alright, so actually let's just jump straight in. I've played this character personally. This is actually where's my mouse? My own character over here, level 10. Obviously, I made a video about a level 12 character, so I kind of upgraded it a bit. Forgot how to speak. But yeah, let's just talk a bit more details about all of these nooks and crannies. I mean, at the end of the day, you are a Sorcadin, you hit things, you smite things, and well, you have high armor class, and it's not really much different than any other Sorcadin experience, unless you are dealing with the extraplanar influences, monsters, forces. You have this class feature from the Paladin called, well, let me find it, not that. Abjure the Extraplanar, yeah, I probably butchered that pronunciation, but basically you can use your channel divinity to castigate unworldly beings. As an action, you present your holy symbol, and each aberration, celestial, elemental, fey, or fiend within 30 feet of you that can hear you must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the creature is turned for 1 minute or until it takes damage. A turned creature must spend its turns trying to move as far away from you as it can, and it can't willingly end its move in a space within 30 feet of you. For its action, it can use only the dash action or try to escape from an effect that prevents it from moving. If there's nowhere to move, the creature can take the dodge action, and that's pretty much it. You basically just, whoever fails the saving throw of these creature types, they are effectively outside of the battle. And this has pretty much been my main tool in the Descent into Avernus campaign. So I've actually been playing this character for quite a while now in campaign that's not listed here, but yeah, level 10, Descent into Avernus. It's full of fiends, you know, demons, devils, stuff like that, and I've just been using this thing for all the time, pretty much. I mean, whenever I can. And you know, it's kind of been the primary thing. Your backup option is always obviously damage. You got extra attack, you got decent saving throws. You got the Sorcerer stuff because you're a Sorcadin, you have 6 levels in Sorcerer. Spells, obviously, a lot of them. I only kind of made a short list here of the, let's say, most important, impactful ones. But I'm gonna talk about it a bit more later. And obviously feats the mighty trio of Resilient, Constitution, Warcaster, and Sentinel. As I've already stated in the previous video, this is a level 12 character max. I haven't really explored going with it further than that. Part of the reason is because me personally, I pretty much just kind of thought about it up until level 12, because Descent into Avernus is a level 12 maximum character level campaign. It still has very high damage because Divine Smite combined with Shadow Blade and, you know, even Spirit Guardians and stuff like that. It's got insane damage potential, not the highest, but there is this thing like called, let's say, good enough, for the lack of a better term, and you are more than good enough in that department. Your control capability is insane. Aberrations, Celestials, Elementals, Fey, or Fiends, that's a lot of creature types that you can control with your channel divinity. I think that's probably the best feature of everything that you have at your own disposal, because, you know, it doesn't waste anything other than the use of the channel divinity option, which you get every short rest, right? So, you are very adaptable in combat. I mean, you have 6 levels in Paladin, 6 levels in Sorcerer. There's a lot of options at your disposal. Balanced action economy. You are somewhat bonus action bottlenecked, not a lot really, because you are still casting Shadow Blade with the bonus action, and then with your round number 2 bonus action, you can then start casting Booming Blade with the Quicken Meta Magic. And yes, I know there's probably gonna be some comments saying that you can't quicken the Booming Blade, the Shadow Blade. I made a video about it. If I remember, I'm gonna post it down in the description. And if you're already scrolling down the description, then, whoops, you know, might as well like, share, and comment and subscribe. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I made a mess. Anyway, so that's that. Spell slot, you're very spell slot efficient. I mean, you have a lot of slots because of your sorcerer levels do speed up your spellcasting progression quite a lot. It's the reason to go Sorcadin as like a chassis to build your character upon. The core class combination of a Divine Smite, the core class feature combo of Paladin's Divine Smite and Sorcerer's just, you know, full caster spell slot progression just gives you way more spell slots way earlier at character level 12 than you would otherwise get with the single class Paladin. You know, you have decent utility and support options. We can talk spells for days. Everybody's got their own favorites. I got my own, and part of those biases and my preferences and favorite spells are have somewhat affected my decisions in this document. More on that later. You know, there's decent roleplay potential with this character because you are combining certain kind of like, you know, narrative options that can be role-played through the both mechanics and background of the character and just the overall story. This character, I feel, is very adaptable to any campaign that specifically goes outside of the material plane, especially, of course, if you're dealing with the creature types that we've just discussed for the Abjure, the Extraplanar channel divinity. But even without that, I mean, you still have a decent second option, which is called Watcher's Will. You know, you use your channel divinity to give everybody for 1 minute advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. That's big. A lot of campaigns at higher levels do target your mental saving throws, you know, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws instead of your dexterity, strength, and constitution. So, yeah. I think this is, you know, just like any Sorcadin, you know, there's, if you want to optimize for damage, there's like one route, but this is kind of like more in the, I want to explore other options, lane, pathway, let's call it that way. I've talked about race before. I like custom lineage just because I get 60 feet of dark vision. You can go variant human. Point buy does change a little bit. I don't think there's much that needs to be discussed here. With custom lineage, it's a bit more wonky because you cannot have a third 16 at level 1. So pretty much with the feat tax that this build is requiring of you, your charisma with custom lineage will remain 14. Unless, of course, you roll well. In our campaign, we actually rolled for stats, and this is actually what you see on the screen. This is what I got. 16 in strength, I'm a cripple with 12 in constitution. I got decent wisdom, and I got actually very, very decent charisma. Part of the reason why I personally thought of like taking 1 level in Hexblade for this character, you know, we can maybe discuss that in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. I don't think you need it really. I mean, you already have 16 in strength, plus 1 to hit, and damage is not really gonna matter that much to switch into a third class all of a sudden. I think it's just better to keep it the dual class. Yeah, background Orzo representative. I think this fits both thematically. You know, not the best fit, but definitely somewhat of a fit. That's not that character. This is what, yeah. This is my character. This is the kind of like blank slate. You have the features, you have the characteristics. What's most important is that you get spells. Now, I don't know where it says it here, but you definitely should. Yeah, more on that later because, well, I mean, you get Spirit Guardians, that's the most important one, but you also gain Guidance, which is a cantrip that when party lacks it, that's just a permanent lack of plus 1d4 to all ability checks, and there's no reason not to have that in a party of 4, especially 5, and if you're the one to have it, nobody else has it, then, you know, better have it than not. If your DM doesn't allow Ravnica specific backgrounds, then I think something flavorful like Knight of the Order background would fit, because, you know, this character is kind of, even though I personally don't play that way, it does fit into the more archetypal, stereotypical, you know, lawful good, lawful neutral paladin that would, you know, stick to his or her oath, and this would be the background to fit it, right? Feats, I mean, I've talked about these three extensively in multiple videos over the last couple of years, well, ever since I had this channel. Sentinel obviously gives you a very reliable reaction attack. Your reaction attack with this feat procs way more often than it does otherwise. Warcaster gives you additional safety net against failing Constitution saving throws for concentration spells. Makes casting spells also easier. You don't have to wrangle your weapons and stuff like that, you know, that you would otherwise have to. And Resilient Constitution is something that, you know, first and foremost gives you a 16 in Constitution, especially with the custom lineage, which by itself can only have one 16. Resilient Constitution does give you +1 to Constitution, and with 15 in point buy, it definitely helps. These three is something that I almost always go on all of my Sorcadins. Exceptions exist. In this particular case, for example, I didn't go for it because my ability scores were so bad. Other than Charisma. Charisma was awesome. Strength is fine, but Constitution is low and everything else is low. I pretty much had to spend one of my ability score improvements for improving my abilities instead of taking a feat. So, you know, your mileage may vary, and it depends on specific circumstances and stuff like that. As a DM, a side note, let's have a little bit of a digression. I prefer point buy. I think it just makes it fair and even across the playing field. Easier for everybody to be kind of like on a more closer to each other, compared to like having one character having multiple 18s or even multiple 20s, while, for example, I'm over here with 12 in Constitution still at level 10. And not even a single 20, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not gonna spend too much talking about the Paladins, other than, you know, I still think starting in Paladin is better because you get proficiencies in Wisdom saving throws, heavy armor, and you get proficiencies in all weapons. Starting in Sorcerer would allow you to ditch Resilient Con feat, but you do lose heavy armor proficiency. You also don't get heavy armor proficiency when you multi-class into a Paladin instead of outside of a Paladin. And if you think, you know, you can manage it with the Dexterity Paladin, which has high Dexterity score, not this one, but this one, I don't think it's a good pathway just in general, because you're already very multiple ability score dependent, mad. You need high strength to hit things, you need high Constitution because you need hit points and you need to pass Constitution saving throws. And you also need high Charisma because it buffs up everything else that you have, so I don't think introducing a 4th ability score as something that you need to pump up is necessarily good. Now, bear in mind that even if you ditch strength, by rules as written, you still need 13 in strength to multi-class into or outside of a Paladin. So yeah, it just doesn't make much sense to me. I'm gonna skip all this. Obviously, Divine Smite fighting style, we can always discuss that. I mean, at lower levels dueling is just better, but very quickly that +2 to damage gets overshadowed by, in my opinion, constant 5% buff to your armor class. Even now at level 10, with my 21 armor class, when I stack what's the name, Shield of Faith for a +2 to armor class, so 23, and then with my reaction I cast Shield, which basically means a +5, so now all of a sudden my armor class is 28. It still matters, because, you know, even when you deal with a +11, +12 to hit monster, that monster can still miss a decent percentage of attack rolls when your armor class approaches 30s, or is at least high 20s. So yeah, I just personally always almost prefer defensive over dueling. It's more of a like, you know, it kind of also depends on your DM, depends on the type of campaign, depends on the type of monsters that attack you. I mean, if you're dealing, for example, if you're dealing with armor class 10 monsters all the time, then pretty much you're gonna be hitting almost like 90-something% of time. I don't know, doesn't matter. And then maybe dueling actually matters a little bit because, you know, it kind of increases the damage a little bit more than just, you know, percentage-wise. Not gonna go into that. You know me, I've never been much of a deep analytical breakdowns of damages against certain armor classes because D&D... I've played under multiple DMs, everybody's had a different style, and I found that one way of building characters doesn't apply to every DM, every campaign, and every party composition after all. So you gotta be a little bit more flexible, at least that's the way I do things. Let's go back to the most important feature, Abjure the Extraplanar. I'm pretty much just gonna read this off the file because this is a short rest feature. It really sets this particular Paladin apart from everybody else because once you start encountering those creature types that this channel divinity affects, you will be controlling many combat encounters. Even when they have something like magical resistance and stuff like that, which gives them advantage on saving throws and stuff like that, they will still be failing the saving throws, especially if your DM is, you know, a little bit, you know, generous and gives you items like, you know, Bloodwell Vial, Amulet of the Devout, more on that later. This is something that I've been depending on the most. I've kind of been focusing on it. You're not really a one-trick wonder, but you are very stylistically like... Well, at least that's how I've been playing this character. You can completely forget about it and just smite away. But this is the primary reason I made this character in the first place, and why I'm making this video. So, you know, you can or cannot do whatever you want. Watcher's Will is a very solid alternative. I've yet to use it. It's kind of like in that new Tasha's Cauldron of Everything spell, Intellect Fortress. It's kind of similar because you get advantage on mental saving throws, intellect, wisdom, and charisma. I have yet to use it, but you know, if you're dealing with mind flayers who constantly pass your Abjure the Extraplanar channel divinity, then this actually might be a solid option to avoid getting perma-stunned by, you know, way too many tentacle monsters. Ability score improvement pretty standard, extra attack pretty standard, and the reason to go to level 6 is Aura of Protection, which to this day I maintain probably shouldn't be a level 6 feature. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, the Unearthed Arcana for Paladin for the new edition 1D&D, which is still coming out this year if I'm not mistaken, right? Did have this move to a level 10 or at least higher level than it is right now, which, you know, at level 6 having this is pretty big. Even plus 2 to all of your saving throws, and in my specific personal case plus 4. I mean, it's big. It's very big, and you know, just having saving throws like this just, you know, helps a ton. Helps a ton. But yeah, that's it. Switching over to Lunar Sorcerer. I forgot how to speak. This is one of those newer subclasses found in the Dragonlance Shed of the Dragon Queen book. Goddamn, what is it with my speech today? It's a subclass that I've been looking into for a while. It's not the best sorcerer, and I'm not claiming this Sorcadin is the best Sorcadin ever. I think it's capable, I think it's powerful, I think it's fun to play, it's effective, and it's just something different compared to the usual, you know, Vengeance Paladin and then whatever sorcerer else, right? Especially going the Hexadin route, you know, Hexblade Warlock, and then it's just kind of like your cookie cutter doing the same thing all the time. This is a little bit different. That said, though, you're still a sorcerer, you still have your, you know, meta magics, your phonomagic, your spellcasting and stuff like that. One thing that I think stands out a little bit outside of the usual quickened and twin meta magics is the lunar embodiment. I can't speak today. There we go. You learn additional spells at levels 1, 3, and 5. You never reach 7. This is a very interesting feature because, well, long story short, for example, when you decide to be in the full moon phase, you get to cast shield spell 1 time extra for free. It's written somewhere here, I'm not gonna search for it. I think the other spells are not really. Ray of Sickness and Color Spray aren't really that good as shield to be in these moon phases, but you still get a ton of extra spells that you learn and can cast. And then, you know, at level 6 you don't really get much other than, well, one more sorcery point and these features that don't really help that much, but you do get some, you know, situational options that may come into play. It still has to happen to me. We can theorize in the comments down below however we want, but it's never bad to have options, right? Now, spells. This is, I think, where I should spend most amount of time. Booming Blade, probably the best cantrip for any kind of Gish character concept in 5th edition D&D. Guidance from your background. Mold Earth is something that I've been abusing the hell out of lately, and I can go even more. Yeah, I'm not toothing my own horn. This cantrip is crazy, like just the ability to excavate a 5-foot cube of loose earth and dirt is... There's a lot of stuff that can be done with that. Yeah, I mean, you can even go shape water, for example. If you're going into the elemental plane of water, why would you ever learn this cantrip? I mean, that's the most obvious example, but both of them kind of serve the similar purpose, and I think it's worth taking them. I think it's worth learning them. Chill Touch is just kind of like a ranged option. Yes, it doesn't deal as much damage as Firebolt, which is 1d10. This is 1d8 and, you know, 2d8 and 3d8 at some point. I like it for the fact that it prevents enemies from healing. That's just something that always sells this cantrip to me. And yeah, to this day and probably until the end of 5th edition, I'm gonna claim that this is the best cantrip as like your alternative for when you cannot get into melee and are, for whatever reason, forced to cast cantrips at range. Prestidigitation Message, this is something that, you know, I like this one just for the fact that you can, you know, create fun little, you know, magical tricks. But yeah, if you're the one to constantly engage in secretive conversations, then definitely this is probably more fitting towards you. I don't actually personally, but sometimes I played characters that did kind of have a little bit of a bend towards constantly, you know, doing things in the background, and yeah, I mean, this is more of a taste choice, not the power choice, right? Now, level 1 spells. Let's start with the Paladin. Shield of Faith, obvious buff, something that you might even use at level 12. Level 1, cheap, very useful, +2 AC. Even if you lose concentration on it, you don't really care that much, and it always just helps you get less, you know, take less hits, take less damage. Bless, obviously another spell that's very good at early levels, and then at some point it actually becomes very good at later levels, because you can quicken and then cast it as a bonus action, you know, with the Sorcerer's Quicken Meta Magic. I don't really do that personally very often, but I've seen it done and it's perfectly viable. Plus 1d4 to all saves and all hit rolls in combat is very, very good. Nothing against it. Something that I use on lower levels is Wrathful Smite. I don't rely on it too much on higher levels because my bonus action is usually spent on whatever else, right? Quickening spells, casting Shadow Blade, whatever. Divine Favor on its own is a bonus action spell. If you just want a little bit more damage, but don't want to burn a lot of first level slots on Divine Smite, then this spell definitely comes into action. For some reason I don't have it here, but I probably have it there. Yeah, at some point I stopped preparing it because, well, you just cast Shadow Blade, right? But at lower levels this is definitely, especially if you're single classing a Paladin, this is just overall very, very decent DPR buff for longer combat encounters. Ceremony, you know, there's that +2 bonus to armor class if you get married to somebody, and then that honeymoon period lasts. I don't even know if I have it in here, but yeah, it's kind of like a fun spell. I always kind of leave it included in these Paladin guides because I just find it interesting. You know, you can always do stuff with it. Make the whole game a little bit more fun, enjoyable, and you know, interesting, engaging. Now, level 1 sorcerer spells, obviously absorb elements. You already have shield, which is the only reason I didn't include it in here, because you get it, you learn it for free from your sorcerer subclass. Lunar sorcerer learns it, you know, for free, shield, right? If you didn't, it would be included on this list. I've talked about both of those spells to death in previous videos. You can go watch them. Absorb elements better at higher levels because you take more of those non-physical damage types like fire, lightning, cold, and thunder. Acid, sorry. While Silvery Barbs is one of those new spells that just, you know, crazy. It's just... The amount of times that I've used this personally to prevent a DM from critting and dealing a crap ton of damage to either myself or the opponent is substantial. There are ways around it, but overall it's just kind of like when the opponent doesn't have an answer to it, you really like to have it, and when the opponent does have an answer to it, you have other toys to play with, right? Second level Paladin spells, obviously Find Steed, dependable spell that gives you a warhorse, which has more movement speed, so mobility buff and all of that. It does get buffed on its own, and since the fact that you have a lot of self-buffing spells, all of those get, you know, transferred over to your steed, which can be like, you know, extra hit points, extra movement speed, stuff like that. Plenty extra armor class, damage resistances, all of that, pretty much. Aid, dependable maximum and current hit points buff. If there's no cleric around to cast it, you do have to do it. Kind of. I mean, you don't have to, you have to do nothing. I mean, but it's kind of advisable to do it. Zone of Truth is just something that I think fits most Paladins, especially this one, who's kind of like took an oath to preserve the material plane from the bad and malevolent influences of the extraplanar multidimensional forces, and therefore, I mean, it is reasonable to assume that at some point you might actually capture some of those creatures that do threaten the material plane, and, well, interrogate them, right? Level 2 Sorcerer spells, Shadow Blade. This is the... I mean, I think the first video on this channel is specifically about this spell. I think it's still one of the best Gish spells in the game. We can discuss it and argue. There's probably and definitely better spells, at least, especially at higher levels. But for the levels that you get to play this character at, this is something that you're gonna depend on a lot. Unless you get a bit of a more generous DM who, you know, maybe gives you a legendary item that gives you even more damage than this spell would give on its own. Misty Step, very dependable bonus action, level 2 teleport. It does kind of, if you rely on it a lot, it does kind of burn a lot of your level 2 and level 3 slots, but I mean, hey, it's worth it. Level 3 counter spell, obviously, Sorcerer. You do wanna, for some reason, oh yeah, obviously. You do wanna prevent your enemy spellcasters from doing whatever harm with their spells that they wanna do to you and your party mates. I still like Fireball and Lightning Bolt, though you definitely don't have to take them. We can talk about going even more into the control side via like Hypnotic Pattern. I decided to go against it because I think you definitely... I mean, Spirit Guardians, first and foremost, on its own, is not a primarily damage. I mean, it deals decent damage, don't get me wrong, especially if you upcast it via level 5 slot, right? So now you're all of a sudden dealing 5d8 damage to everybody within 15 feet for the duration. You know, it's a form of control. You make the area into difficult terrain, basically. Well, you have the movement speed, and, you know, you deal damage, so it's definitely one of those spells that put all of the enemies that are, especially melee ones that are affected by you, on a timer, right? I mean, they have to do something to prevent from, you know, getting screwed. And that's that. Obviously, there are spells like Hypnotic Pattern, Slow. You know, there are spells that don't necessarily deal any damage and can provide control. If you want to go that route, I'm not going to go too deep into it in this video, but if you want me to, I will point you to some other videos that I made before, and I actually might even make a separate video about it in the future. Depends on the amount of interest that gets shown in that. Something that I think will benefit this character as a self-buff is spells like Haste, which I don't know if I have here. No, actually, for some reason I don't know why. I should probably learn it. I made a mistake, but yeah, it's there. It serves as kind of like a all-around buff that includes first Shield of Faith. Both of the spells are bonus action, but the Shield of Faith only provides... Let me actually find it. There is no reason to... Okay, there's no yeah, there we go. So +2 bonus to AC. You get that from Shield of Faith, you get it from here. But on top of that, you gain advantage on dex saving throws. You gain an additional action which can be used to take the attack, one weapon attack only. Dash, disengage, hide, or use an object. All of those are pretty good. And your movement speed gets doubled. So basically you get Shield of Faith, movement buff, which also transfers to your steed because it's a self-buffing spell, and you know, extra mobility, extra all of that is just overall good. Now, something that is worth mentioning here. For some reason I didn't include it here, but maybe I should. Let me know in the comments if you would want me to include it in this guide. I will post it. Is a fly spell, right? So fly spell. Fly is something that you will be depending on a lot if you're dealing with a lot of flying type of enemies. You are primarily a melee damage dealer, and at the end of the day, most combat encounters sooner or later boil down to how much damage you can do, how quickly. And if your enemies are flying like 60 to 100 feet above you, you do need a fly spell. Again, I don't have it here for some reason, but definitely something that you should consider. And once you actually start going into the 3rd, 4th, and higher level spells, this is where there's more and more separation between different playstyles and paths and DM styles and type of monsters and types of campaigns. Are you dungeon delving? Are you exploring a lot? If you're exploring a lot, maybe you can even ditch some of the damage spells and take some of the exploration spells, utility spells, right? All of those factors come into play, but as a whole, as a purely character-driven breakdown of spells, this is kind of like something that you can just kind of like cookie cutter take and you're probably fine in most situations. Items. Something that I've started doing some time ago, which I haven't done when I started this channel, but definitely over time I think should be talked about, at least now. Maybe even especially now that there's more and more items coming out, official ones. We have Crystal Double-Bladed Scimitar. For some reason I can't find it on D&D Beyond. It's not there, or maybe I'm just blind. But basically, Crystal Double-Bladed Scimitar gives you a bonus action attack for free, which deals 1d4 damage. On its own, it deals 2d4 damage, plus the bonus that you get from the weapon being a crystal weapon. Whatever type of weapon that has a crystal in its name deals extra 1d8 radiant damage. Obviously, this is a no-brainer fluff. A thematic fit because you do deal radiant damage with Divine Smite, and this stacking just one extra die of that damage does perfectly fit into your theme. You can even go the step beyond. Part of the theme and the fluff of my own character, which, by the way, I actually painted. It's a very bad paint job. I don't know if you can see it very well. The lighting is not that good. Yeah, I mean, I tried, I failed, but hey, at least it has some paint on it. This is actually a half construct. So custom lineage is kind of like a blank slate racial choice, and you can be whatever the hell you want. And I decided to be like a half humanoid, half construct, part of the experiments of a certain land that I don't want to yet reveal because the campaign hasn't reached a point that I want to reveal to my party mates the full backstory of this character. So that's kind of like the route that I took it. And part of that route is definitely the crystal weapon, right? Very early into the campaign, the DM gave me Crystal Rapier, and I definitely think, even though this kind of weapon is not really a rapier, I imagine myself piercing with it more than I'm actually just hacking and cutting heads off. So mechanically I chose to have a rapier instead of a, usual longsword or battle axe or something like that. I don't know why I'm going into fluff, but I just kind of wanted to talk about it. Yeah, there's definitely ways to include all of the stuff, features, feats, traits, items, into the fluff and backstory of the character, because through all of the magical abilities and gear that you get, you slowly discover your magical capabilities, right? And part of the magical capabilities of this character is that he is a sorcerer, and as a sorcerer, he definitely gets to discover some things about himself, and that's always fun for me. Part of the reason why we play D&D is just so we can pretend that we are somebody else, that we are actually not, right? Amulet of the Devout is pretty solid because, well, one thing that it does, at least the way it's written, is that it gives you a +3 bonus to spell attack rolls and the saving throw DCs of your spells. It doesn't say your paladin spells, it says your spells. I haven't looked into it. I don't know whether this is just like an oversight or something like that. It probably should only buff your paladin or cleric spells, but the way it's written and the way it works on D&D Beyond, most importantly, is that it also buffs your sorcerer spellcasting, right? The spell saving DCs and attack rolls of your sorcerers. As you can see here, with only 14 in charisma, which is very low for level 12, you have +12 to spell attack and 20 spell save DC. If you know, if you have been playing for any amount of time, you would know that, let's say, naturally, without any fantasy steroids, you can only achieve like a DC of 17 because you can have a maximum of 20 without the magical gear, which is a +5, and then your proficiency bonus is +6 maximum at level 17 onward, from level 17 to 20. And then obviously with a stacked on top of an 8, well, it's actually 19. I don't know the maths, right? But yeah, basically that's your natural limit. You definitely can go way higher than that with the magical gear, and obviously that's part of the... It's probably gonna be the biggest separator between this character working very, very well and decently. Let's call it that way. Bloodwell Vial is something that I still think is good on this character. Half of you is a sorcerer, and these Tasha's Cauldron of Everything items like Amulet of the Devout and Bloodwell Vial are they are very good on any character that they are class specific items, and they've been designed specifically to help the core class features, and there's just no reason not to have it if you can. Obviously, since you're a frontliner, you need all the magical armor that you can get. I personally like the combination of adamantine armor, adamantine plate, because When you get that net 20 in your face, even though you have silvery barbs, which you can use to prevent it, what if you, for whatever reason, don't have your reaction? You spent it on Sentinel Feet, you spent it on something else, and you just got unlucky, the DM got lucky and rolled a net 20 against you. This prevents that from hurting as much as it usually hurts, right? If you don't get adamantine armor, you can have any bonus on the plate armor and shield that the DM is willing to give you. And if your campaign is big on magic, spells, you know, stuff like that, a lot of hostile magic coming your way, Mantle of Spell Resistance is definitely something that you should probably consider. Again, this is not something that I think, these are not the best items, this is just something that I've kind of looked into it and I think it makes sense. And I think these are reasonable asks as a level 12 character to the DM, right? Now, you might not get all of this, but even if you just get like an Amulet of the Devout with a +3 bonus, let's say a +1 or a +2 shield, and a crystal double-bladed scimitar, so now you basically have like maybe a rare, a very rare, and uncommon, a rare, and a very rare item. That's kind of like not that big of a, you know, not too much to ask from level 12 characters. So I'm kind of going for a loose expectation of what would be the most expected magical gear for a level 12 character, right? Progression, pretty freaking simple. Well, almost said an F-bomb over there. 6 levels in Paladin first to get that aura of protection as soon as possible, and then obviously 6 levels in Sorcerer for all the magical toys. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. Long video. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. And as always, special shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you for your continued support. I will start posting more often the breakdowns and the new videos. Stay tuned. Dart Bobber out.